What happens when three nations decide they've had enough of the old rules and break away from a regional alliance to control their economic fate? This isn't a hypothetical scenario or a dream, it's happening now. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, once bound by the Economic Community of West African States ECOWAS, have taken a radical step to reshape their futures. They've introduced a new tariff, a 0.5% tax on goods imported outside their new alliance, the Alliance of Sahel States AES. This move has sparked controversy and raised questions about the future of regional trade, African unity, and the power dynamics within the Sahel.
Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have announced a new 0.5% levy on imported goods in their bid to fund a new three-state union after leaving the larger regional economic bloc.
But this isn't just about economics. This is a bold political statement. For years, these nations, deeply rooted in colonial histories and marred by Western interference, have seen their sovereignty chipped away by foreign influence. Their withdrawal from ECOWAS is a calculated move to distance themselves from what they view as a colonial-era construct, one that continues to dictate their policies from afar. Now, with the formation of AES and the introduction of this new tariff, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are making it clear. They are not simply looking to survive. They want to thrive on their terms. This is a dramatic shift that could change not just their future but the entire trajectory of the Sahel region. But what does this mean for the broader geopolitical landscape of Africa? Let's find out. Before we talk about the new tariffs, we need to understand AES's purpose. The formation of the Alliance of Sahel States AES marks a pivotal moment in the history of West Africa. In a region once dominated by external influences and colonial legacies, three nations, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, have decided to break away from the economic and political confines of ECOWAS, a regional bloc created with the promise of fostering cooperation among West African states. This break is not just a matter of geography or trade, it is a bold statement of sovereignty, independence, and the desire for self-determination. But what led to this decisive moment? Why did these nations feel the need to create an entirely new regional alliance, and what do they hope to achieve with the AES? To understand the birth of the AES, it is important to first look at the origins and evolution of ECOWAS. Established in 1975, the Economic Community of West African States was designed to promote economic integration, stability, and development across West Africa. It was built on the idea that a unified region would be better equipped to tackle poverty, manage resources, and face global challenges together. In theory, ECOWAS was an excellent framework for economic growth, ensuring that member states could pool their resources and navigate the global stage as a bloc. However, over time, the reality of ECOWAS's functioning has fallen short of its original goals. While the organization has managed some degree of economic cooperation, its political and economic decisions have often been influenced by external powers, particularly former colonial rulers and Western interests. The integration processes within ECOWAS also favored larger, more developed member states, leaving smaller nations like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso to struggle with systemic inequalities and a lack of influence in the decision-making process. For many in these Sahelian countries, ECOWAS became synonymous with policies that served foreign interests more than their own. The decisions made at the ECOWAS level often lacked the local context and sensitivity to the unique challenges faced by these nations. Coupled with growing frustration with the economic stagnation, poverty, and lack of regional autonomy, the push for a break from ECOWAS grew louder. In recent years, the Sahel region has witnessed a series of coups, which have further strained the relationship between these nations and ECOWAS. Mali's military coup in 2020, followed by similar coups in Burkina Faso and Niger, shifted the political landscape. These military governments, led by leaders like Colonel Assimi Goïta in Mali, Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, and later Captain Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso, and General Abdourahmane Tiani in Niger, presented a new type of leadership, one that was fiercely independent, anti-colonial, and determined to break free from Western interference. The coups reflected a deep dissatisfaction with the status quo. The leaders of these nations saw the move away from ECOWAS as an essential step toward achieving true sovereignty. They viewed ECOWAS not just as ineffective, but as a body that often imposed policies that contradicted the interests of the Sahelian people. Western-backed sanctions, economic aid that came with strings attached, and the failure of ECOWAS to address the region's urgent security issues created a fertile ground for a new political direction. For these new military leaders, the push to create a new alliance was more than just a political act. It was a direct challenge to the neo-colonial structures that still had a hold over much of West Africa's governance and economy. The AES was seen as an alternative, a chance for these countries to reassert control over their destinies without the influence of former colonial powers or international entities that had long been seen as meddling in African affairs. On the surface, the AES may seem like a regional economic alliance, but it is far more than that. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. The core of the AES's mission is the pursuit of true autonomy, an autonomy that would empower its members to make decisions that are in their own best interests, free from the shackles of external control. The AES represents an economic and political reclamation of the Sahel's sovereignty. It's about creating a region where the political will is shaped by local governments and citizens, not by foreign actors with vested interests. The AES is not merely a response to ECOWAS's failure, but a blueprint for an entirely new way of governance. At its heart is the principle of regional cooperation, but it also seeks to address specific needs of the Sahel nations. By focusing on shared economic goals, security cooperation, and sustainable development, the AES aims to unite its members with a vision that is tailored to the unique circumstances of the Sahel. The formation of AES was also a direct response to the failure of regional security measures. The Sahel has long been plagued by insurgents, and ECOWAS's inability to effectively tackle these security issues has left these nations vulnerable. In contrast, the AES promises to put the security of its members first, working together to create a stable, secure region that can address its internal challenges without relying on foreign military interventions or aid. Beyond security, the AES is also a framework for economic cooperation, one that prioritizes self-sufficiency and regional trade. The decision to move away from ECOWAS was, in many ways, driven by the desire to forge stronger internal ties and to reduce reliance on external economic powers. By pooling resources, sharing expertise, and implementing coordinated economic policies, the AES aims to create an economic environment that benefits its members without the interference of international actors or organizations with conflicting interests. A key feature of the AES's economic strategy is to focus on local industries, agricultural production, and infrastructure development. The Sahel has rich natural resources, but these have often been exploited by external forces. The AES aims to keep the benefits of these resources within the region, creating jobs, boosting local economies, and investing in long-term projects that will benefit future generations. The formation of this alliance is, therefore, a vital step in breaking the cycle of dependency that has long defined the region. As we look at the formation of the AES, it's clear that this is not just about trade agreements or tariffs. It's about a radical shift in the way these nations view their place in the world. It's about reclaiming autonomy, taking control of their resources, and building a future that is not dictated by foreign powers, but determined by their own decisions. The birth of AES is the beginning of a new chapter for the Sahel and for the African continent as a whole. It's a challenge to the established order and a call for true independence. And with that, the journey of these three nations is just beginning. Now let's come to what you have been waiting for, the tariffs. When Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso decided to break away from ECOWAS and form the Alliance of Sahel States, they weren't just making a political statement. They were also taking control of their economic future. One of the most significant steps in this new direction was the introduction of a 0.5% tariff on goods imported from outside the AES. This tariff is not just a policy, it's a strategic move aimed at bolstering regional economies, reducing dependency on foreign powers, and funding the AES's ambitious initiatives. But what exactly does this tariff entail, And why is it such a pivotal part of this new alliance's strategy? At first glance, a 0.5% tariff might seem like a relatively minor tax, but in the context of these nations' broader goals, it represents much more than a simple trade policy. The tariff targets imported goods that come from outside the AES member states. This means that products from other countries, particularly those in Europe and the Americas, will face a slight increase in cost when entering these three nations. The goal is to make it more expensive for foreign goods to flood local markets, thereby giving a competitive edge to locally produced items and reducing reliance on imports. This tariff is designed to encourage trade within the AES and foster a more self-sufficient regional economy. By taxing foreign goods, the hope is that consumers and businesses within the member countries will turn to local alternatives, which will, in turn, stimulate regional industries, create jobs, and generate economic growth. It's an economic strategy meant to keep more money circulating within the region, building a stronger foundation for the future. However, the 0.5% tariff is not just a reactionary policy. It is a calculated long-term approach. The tax is set at a level that is low enough to avoid alienating trading partners, but high enough to incentivize the development of local markets. It's a delicate balance, aiming to reduce dependency without causing severe disruptions to established trade flows. Why would these countries impose a tariff that affects consumers in the short term, especially in the wake of economic instability caused by the recent political changes? The answer lies in the broader economic vision of the AES. By implementing the 0.5% tariff, the alliance aims to shift its economic paradigm from one dominated by external forces to one driven by regional self-reliance. The idea is not just to generate revenue, but to create a framework for long-term economic growth that puts local industries at the center of development. The economic logic behind the tariff is rooted in the desire to encourage local production. The Sahel region is rich in natural resources, but much of it has been extracted and exported without much local value-added production. By reducing reliance on imports, the AES hopes to foster industries in key sectors like agriculture, textiles, and manufacturing. For instance, Mali is known for its agricultural potential, especially in rice and cotton, but much of its agricultural output has been exported as raw materials. The AES hopes to invest in local processing industries that can add value to these products, creating jobs and enhancing the overall economic structure. Another key element of this economic vision is the desire to reduce the political and economic influence of former colonial powers. The Sahel has long been a battleground for external actors, vying for control over its resources. The AES and its tariff are an attempt to wrest back some of that power, giving the region greater control over its economic decisions and future development. One of the critical aspects of the tariff is that it specifically targets imports from outside the AES bloc. While this may sound like an economic protectionist measure, it is strategically aimed at building a strong, self-sustaining regional economy. However, this move also carries consequences for international trade partners. European and American goods will become more expensive in these countries, which could impact companies that rely on exporting to the Sahel. But there's more to the story. The tariff is not a blanket tax on all imports. Certain goods are exempted, specifically those related to humanitarian aid, non-refundable subsidies, and goods in transit. These exemptions are designed to prevent the tariff from harming essential imports such as food aid, medicine, and other humanitarian supplies. In addition, goods in transit, those simply passing through the region on their way to other destinations, are not subject to the tax, ensuring that the region's role as a transit hub for international trade is not hampered. The real shift, however, will come from the emphasis on boosting local trade and industry. As external goods become more expensive, regional producers will have the chance to step up and fill the void. If the AES can achieve its goal of strengthening local industries, the tariff could ultimately reduce the region's reliance on outside powers, creating a more balanced and resilient economy. So, where does the revenue from this 0.5% tariff go? The money collected from the tariff will not simply be added to state coffers. Instead, it will be reinvested into the initiatives and development projects of the AES. The goal is to use this revenue to fund regional development projects, infrastructure improvements, and social programs aimed at lifting the people of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso out of poverty and creating a more sustainable future. A portion of the funds will be allocated to large-scale infrastructure projects, building roads, bridges, and energy networks that can help facilitate trade within the region and improve access to services. Agriculture will also be a key focus, with funds directed toward improving farming techniques, expanding irrigation, and increasing local production to meet the region's growing food demands. The AES also envisions using the tariff revenue to strengthen its social safety nets. With the region facing economic and social challenges, the alliance intends to invest in education, healthcare, and social services to improve the quality of life for its citizens. These funds will not just serve as a stopgap measure, but as part of a broader, long-term plan to create a self-sustaining economy that isn't dependent on foreign aid. The 0.5% tariff is more than just a tax. It is a signal of intent. It reflects a new regional economic vision, one that seeks to empower local economies and reduce vulnerability to global market fluctuations. The AES is positioning itself as a counterbalance to the dominance of former colonial powers, charting a course toward greater economic autonomy and self-sufficiency. This tariff is only the beginning, with the potential to transform the economic landscape of the Sahel. As Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso move forward, the real test will be how effectively the AES can harness the revenue generated by the tariff and channel it into sustainable long-term development. If successful, the AES could become a beacon for other African nations looking to free themselves from the economic shackles of the past and build a more equitable future. The introduction of the 0.5% tariff by the AES has profound implications not just for regional trade, but for the economies of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. This policy shift is not simply about increasing government revenue, it's about rethinking how these nations engage with the global economy and build self-sustaining local markets. The economic repercussions of the tariff, along with the broader goals of the AES, will have far-reaching effects on consumers, industries, and the future economic trajectory of these nations. But how exactly will this new economic model impact the lives of everyday people in the Sahel? For many in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, the introduction of the 0.5% tariff may not initially feel like a dramatic change. According to Mali's economy minister, Alousseini Sanou, the tariff won't significantly impact consumer prices, a statement that may seem contradictory to conventional economic wisdom. But upon closer examination, this assertion reveals a key feature of the AES's broader strategy. The tariff is meant to be implemented in a way that doesn't burden the average citizen, at least not in the short term. The AES's move to introduce the tariff while simultaneously ensuring that consumer prices remain stable is a balancing act. In theory, the tariff will encourage local production by making imported goods slightly more expensive. But this will only work if local industries can step up to meet demand. Therefore, part of AES's strategy is to gradually build up local markets and infrastructure in such a way that the supply chain becomes more resilient and self-reliant over time. As local goods become more competitive, the need for imports will naturally decrease, and prices should stabilize due to more localized production. However, the immediate challenge lies in the ability of these nations to increase domestic production fast enough to offset the effects of foreign goods becoming more expensive. Short-term price inflation could occur as local businesses struggle to ramp up supply. The government's goal is to ensure that these challenges are met with structural reforms, investing in infrastructure and local industries that can eventually provide alternatives to imported goods. For the average consumer, this means a period of adjustment. The key will be whether the AES's development plans succeed in making local industries more competitive, and whether the region's economic infrastructure can scale rapidly enough to meet demand without causing excessive inflation. The economic development goals of the AES extend far beyond simply implementing a tariff. The alliance is keenly aware that sustainable growth requires investment in local industries, infrastructure, and the development of a diverse economy. As these nations move away from relying on imports, they must build up domestic industries in sectors like agriculture, textiles, and manufacturing. The tariff revenue is meant to be a critical funding source for these long-term goals. A major focus will be on agriculture, a sector that has historically been underdeveloped despite the Sahel's rich natural resources. With many of the region's nations depending on the export of raw materials, the AES plans to implement strategies that turn local agricultural products into finished goods. For example, instead of simply exporting cotton, these nations would aim to establish local textile industries that could process cotton into finished clothing, boosting the value-added production within the region. By investing in agricultural self-sufficiency, the AES aims to reduce food dependency and create a more resilient economy. Infrastructure development is also a priority. The Sahel region suffers from underdeveloped transportation and energy networks, which significantly hamper its ability to trade efficiently, create jobs, and foster growth. Using the revenue from the tariff, AES intends to build roads, bridges, and energy systems that can support industries, improve connectivity within the region, and facilitate the flow of goods. Without these investments, the region would remain fragmented, dependent on external trade networks that often fail to meet local needs. By focusing on infrastructure and agriculture, the AES hopes to create a self-sustaining economy that is less vulnerable to external shocks and more equipped to weather the challenges of global economic fluctuations. The plan is to reduce reliance on foreign aid and create a more dynamic and resilient local economy. The introduction of the tariff and the accompanying economic reforms will undoubtedly have both short-term and long-term consequences. In the short term, the region may face challenges as local industries struggle to scale up production and supply chains adjust. The immediate impact will likely be felt in the form of higher prices for imported goods, which could affect consumers and businesses reliant on foreign products. However, the AES is betting on the fact that once local production picks up, the long-term benefits will outweigh the initial challenges. In the long run, if AES's economic vision succeeds, the region could see a significant shift in its economic structure. The goal is to build a more diversified economy that is not reliant on imports or aid. By focusing on building local industries, the AES hopes to foster job creation, reduce poverty, and increase the economic independence of these countries. Additionally, the increased focus on regional trade within the AES should create more economic opportunities for citizens, as local markets become more competitive and interconnected. The long-term economic impact will also be shaped by how effectively the AES can manage and invest the tariff revenue. If it is used to foster the development of industries that can scale and create employment opportunities, the region's economic outlook could drastically improve. However, if the funds are mismanaged or if the investments fail to create sustainable growth, the region could face significant setbacks. One of the most difficult tasks facing the AES will be achieving true regional economic integration. While the tariff aims to boost local industries, it also risks creating trade barriers between AES member states and the rest of the world. If not handled carefully, this could lead to a fragmented regional market, with countries turning inward and focusing only on internal trade. For the AES to truly succeed, it will need to integrate local economies more effectively, creating a seamless market that can leverage the region's collective strength. The success of AES's economic plans will hinge on the ability of the three nations to cooperate fully, pooling their resources and talent to create a united economic front. The challenge lies in coordinating policies, regulations, and infrastructure investments across borders. Do you think AES is taking bold actions? What will these actions mean for Africa? Let us know in the comment section. After this, will more nations want to join AES? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.